Benjamin Carter had always believed that a company's true strength lay in its people. As the Black CEO of a tech powerhouse, he dedicated his life to fostering innovation and inclusivity. Though his team admired him as a visionary leader, Benjamin often wondered what his employees were like when he wasn't around. Were they as respectful and committed to the company's values as he hoped? To uncover the truth, Benjamin devised a plan. He would spend a month undercover as a janitor. On his first day in his new role, Benjamin felt a mix of anticipation and vulnerability. In place of his usual suit and tie, he wore worn jeans, an old hoodie, and a faded baseball cap. Only his assistant, Maria, and a few board members were aware of his plan. No one else in the company suspected that their CEO would be mopping floors or emptying trash cans. He entered through the service entrance, just as any other maintenance worker would, and was greeted by Sam, the head custodian. Sam, an older man with decades of experience in janitorial work, was unaware of Benjamin's real identity. With a gruff smile, Sam handed him a mop and bucket, showing him to the cafeteria. Benjamin soon learned that being a janitor meant being invisible. Employees moved around him as if he didn't exist. That first morning, he watched a manager cut in line at the coffee machine, disregarding the custodian waiting quietly with his coffee cup. Benjamin had barely introduced himself to the team when he overheard snippets of conversations about his company, some uplifting, others concerning. In the days that followed, he saw a stark contrast in employee behavior. There were people like Ellie from HR, who greeted him with a warm smile each morning and even went out of her way to ask how he was settling in. Her kindness was a small but welcome reminder that good people were still at the heart of the company. But then there were others, especially among mid-level managers, who barely acknowledged him. He noticed dismissive gestures, raised voices, and cold stares that made him question whether they would act this way if they knew who he really was. By the second week, Benjamin was spending time in various departments, often lingering longer in the break room and corridors where employees gathered. He observed an alarming incident when he was mopping the floor outside a meeting room. Two senior managers were laughing as they discussed a new hire's background, mocking his accent and speculating that he wouldn't fit in. Benjamin's heart sank. This sort of exclusionary talk was the antithesis of the values he had worked so hard to instill. Later that day, Benjamin had another troubling encounter. He was cleaning the break room when Linda, the head of marketing, walked in and began making comments about the lower ranks and how certain people just weren't cut out for the company's culture. When she noticed Benjamin wiping down the counter, she didn't hesitate to snap at him, telling him to get out of the way so she could prepare her coffee. It was an eye-opening experience, as Linda was someone he'd trusted to be a leader within the company. As Benjamin returned to his routine, he realized that Linda's attitude wasn't an isolated case. A few others shared her superiority complex, treating lower-level staff with minimal respect. He couldn't ignore the bitter irony. These were the very people he'd chosen to lead teams, yet they were fostering an atmosphere of elitism. Amidst the negativity, Benjamin found beacons of kindness that reassured him his company wasn't completely lost. There was Sarah, a young intern in marketing, who noticed Benjamin struggling to carry a heavy load of cleaning supplies. She rushed over to help him, offering a smile and even sharing her lunch with him during her break. Her genuine kindness struck him as he realized she had no ulterior motive. She just wanted to help. Another bright spot was David, a software developer who always greeted Benjamin warmly, often staying late to help clean up the common areas. David showed immense dedication to his work, even spending his own time organizing coding tutorials for new hires. Benjamin admired this commitment and made a mental note to reward it when his time undercover was over. However, each act of kindness was countered by moments that stung. One afternoon, while he was taking out the trash, Marcus, the head of sales, made a point to tell Benjamin that he was moving too slowly. "You know, the quicker you do your job, the quicker the real work can get done," Marcus sneered, looking down at him. Benjamin simply nodded, keeping his frustration in check. But his patience was wearing thin, especially after witnessing Marcus and a few other managers gossiping about one of the custodial staff. "They just don't belong here," Marcus had said. Benjamin clenched his fists, understanding that he couldn't let this toxic culture persist. On a particularly challenging day, Benjamin's tolerance was truly tested. He was cleaning a conference room late in the evening when Linda and Marcus entered, discussing a recent sales report. They didn't acknowledge his presence as they poured themselves coffee and began complaining about the diversity quota. "It's just exhausting having to hire people just to meet some imaginary number," Linda said with a scoff. "It's like we're prioritizing appearances over actual skill." Marcus nodded in agreement. "Honestly, it's ridiculous. They're just giving these roles to people who don't even deserve them." The blatant disregard for the values Benjamin held dear was enraging. He wanted to confront them right there, to reveal who he was, but he knew his plan required patience. Instead, he made a note to address this behavior during the changes he planned to implement. The tipping point came a few days later when Benjamin was taking a break with Sam. They were sitting in the janitorial closet, sharing a quiet moment after hours of cleaning. Sam, unaware of Benjamin's true identity, opened up about his struggles. He mentioned how hard it was to work in an environment where people often look down on him because of his job. "They don't see us as people, Ben. To them, we're just the invisible ones," Sam said, his eyes filled with resignation. Those words struck Benjamin deeply. He realized that the company's culture needed an overhaul, not just for the janitorial staff, but for everyone. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. Benjamin called an emergency company-wide meeting, instructing Maria to organize it without revealing the details. Employees filled the conference hall, murmuring in curiosity as they waited for their CEO to arrive. When Benjamin finally appeared, there was a collective silence. But this time, he was dressed not in his usual suit, but in the janitor's attire everyone had come to recognize. Gasps echoed around the room as realization dawned on their faces. He removed his cap and looked around, making eye contact with each of the employees he'd encountered over the past weeks. "Over the last month," Benjamin began, "I have walked these halls as a janitor. I've been invisible to many of you, overheard conversations, and witnessed behavior I hoped I'd never see in this company." He spoke of the kindness he'd experienced from people like Sarah, David, and Sam, individuals who treated him with respect, regardless of who they thought he was. Then he turned to those who had fallen short, highlighting how he had witnessed discriminatory comments, elitism, and a lack of respect for their fellow employees. This company was built on values of equality, inclusion, and respect. "If you believe you are above these values, you do not belong here," he stated, his voice firm. Employees like Marcus and Linda sat stunned, realizing the weight of their actions. The entire room was silent, every eye trained on Benjamin as he announced a plan to rebuild the company culture. He laid out the new policies. Inclusivity training would be mandatory, stricter guidelines would be enforced to prevent discrimination, and every employee would be evaluated on their treatment of others, not just their performance. Benjamin also announced a restructuring of management, appointing people like David and Sarah to roles that would elevate their influence. He made it clear that his undercover journey wasn't just an experiment. It was a wake-up call to root out toxicity and promote kindness as a core principle. Epilogue: a changed company. In the months that followed, the impact of Benjamin's undercover experience reverberated through the company. Employees began treating each other with newfound respect, aware that anyone could be the CEO in disguise. Those who had displayed toxic behaviors were given chances to reform, but some ultimately chose to leave. Benjamin's experience became a tale of change within the company, and a story of humility, reminding everyone that no role is less than another. He continued leading his company with a sharper eye for its culture, his undercover journey serving as a powerful lesson in leadership, compassion, and the importance of seeing every individual as worthy of respect. The company thrived not just in profits, but as a community united by the principle that each person, no matter their title, deserved to be seen and valued.